Good morning. But let's talk about the future of healthcare. The future of healthcare, as we all know, will absolutely be AI-driven. You know, I'm a health tech VC. I'm deeply invested in innovation, and I see it unfolding across countless sectors. Now, what's truly remarkable about our speakers today, or following me, is the scale of implementation that they have not only envisioned, but have successfully brought to their health, to the systems, and they've achieved this. So we have the immense pleasure of welcoming two individuals who are true visionaries in healthcare transformation, especially in the realm of AI. So let's start with Warner Thomas, President and CEO of Sutter Health. Well, he leads a network of 50,000 employees and 12,000 physicians, spearheading a bold charge into the future with over 30 years of experience and also winning Modern Healthcare's 100 Most Influential Award. Not once, but twice, Warner has seen Sutter Health achieve a 139% increase in patient engagement, of course, fueled by AI. He understands that AI is not just a buzzword. For example, it can free up clinicians' times, and he has seen a staggering savings of 1 million hours through AI in 2024 alone. So he's actively building strategic AI capabilities like Sutter Sync, and he understands that AI can be a game changer for healthcare. Please give a huge welcome to Warner Thomas. Warner? And joining Warner is Mohan Giridharadas, the founder and CEO of LeanTaaS. It's no secret that American healthcare isn't perfect, as we still see operating rooms using pencils and papers and faxes. This is where Mohan steps in. LeanTaaS is an award winner of multiple awards, leverages data to improve operational efficiencies in over 190 healthcare systems, 1,200 hospitals nationwide, some of the best like Stanford, UCSF, Johns Hopkins, Emory, and many, many others. Author of the book, Better Healthcare Through Math, Mohan has successfully demonstrated an ability to solve healthcare's hardest challenges at scale. And also, I'm excited to share that Mohan has been named by Becker's Hospital Review to the Great Leaders in Healthcare for 2025. Please give a warm welcome to Mohan Giridharadas.
Thank you, Preeta. I'm thrilled to welcome Warner Thomas, President and CEO of Sutter Health, who also previously led Ochsner Health. Warner, it's wonderful to see you again for this session.
Thanks. Great to be here. Great to be here.
Before we get started, I just want to pause and reflect for a moment on the fact that we've arrived. Not many people can pull off having Satya Nadella as their warm-up band.
Yeah, I know. I think they got the order of the program wrong. I think we were supposed to go first, but yeah. It's, you know, I think there's a couple people left, but I think they all left, so it's fine.
That's all right. Let's start by framing your journey for the audience. You led Ochsner Health to become one of the country's most innovative health systems. And then you took the leadership role at Sutter a little over 2 years ago, leading the organization on a transformational journey. Could you talk to us a little bit about your leadership journey, what drew you to healthcare, and ultimately to each of these two systems?
Sure. You know, really, I came to Sutter because, you know, what kind of drives me personally is trying to make a difference. And to me, you know, all of us as leaders, we're driven by purpose. You know, what do we want to try to accomplish in our life? What impact do we want to have? And I really felt like coming to Sutter, I could have an impact here and make a difference here in Northern and Central California with the areas that we cover. You know, I have spent 24 years in New Orleans at Ochsner Health, great organization. But I think one of the unique things about Sutter, besides having a large presence throughout Northern California, our proximity to Silicon Valley, to the tech companies, is, you know, to me was a huge draw to come to Sutter Health. And I do think that how healthcare, traditional incumbent healthcare organizations embrace technology, embrace the future is going to really determine, whether they're successful or not. And I do think you're going to see health systems really continue to see a divergence of the ones that do embrace technology, do embrace change, do embrace global payment, and the ones that don't. And I think you're going to see a really big change here over the next decade or so of have and have-nots in healthcare. So, we are excited to be leaning into this. We built an innovation center in San Francisco. We've got a huge, footprint here throughout Silicon Valley. We're looking to build more partnerships both in the venture world and with tech companies. And so it's to me, that's where we have to go to be able to kind of address the challenges of the future.
Whenever we hear people talk about connected care, it can go in many different directions. When you think about connected care, what comes to your mind? What do you think the key opportunities to enhance it and take it to the next level might be?
The way I think about it is that we have to be connected to our patients regardless of whether they're in our facilities, in our four walls, or wherever they are. So, I'm connected right now with this watch, my phone, or whatnot. I've got an Oura ring, I've got data that's being generated on me all the time. The question is, how do we take that information and merge it with the health information that we have in Epic, and then, basically derive care and conclusions about people? I think the big evolution we're going to see in healthcare is moving from what's reactive, which means, people call us, they come see us, to proactive, that we know, do you have your screenings? We know, are you on medications or not? We know, are you on chronic disease management programs or not? And we can be proactive and reach out to you, to really being predictive, that we have all the data that you get from various devices you wear or have. We connect with you at home, we connect with you wherever you are, and we take that and merge that with all the clinical data we have and run AI, run algorithms, move to more of a predictive model of healthcare. Because there's amazing things. We can predict codes before they happen in hospitals. We can predict sepsis before it occurs. The biggest predictor of falls at home, we can predict these things. So I think that's where healthcare is going to evolve and change, and we want to be on the front of that, transition.
Sutter, as you said, is a large, complicated system. Since stepping into the role, what have you taken on as your primary focus areas that you double down from day one and are pushing?
So I think one of the things, I got to Sutter in November of 22. Spent my first kind of 30, 45 days, getting around the organization, assessing the situation. I think one of the things that's just just incredibly obvious is that healthcare access in Northern California was worse than I've ever seen it anywhere that I've worked in America.
Oh, wow.
And in one of the, frankly, wealthiest areas of America, access is that challenging. And I think part of that is, some of that's systems, but some of that's really just the number of physicians, clinicians, the access points, the systems we have. So we went to work hard on, we invested about $1 billion of capital. We've got about 23 centers opening this year. We've hired 1,700 physicians and clinicians in 2 years. We've built better access systems. We've increased our online appointments. This year, they'll be up 1 million. So we're going from 4 million to 5 million this year. We probably have almost more. We're probably up about, at least 50% from, 2022. So the fact of the matter is we're becoming more accessible, easier to use. Look, is it perfect? No, we got a long way to go. We got a lot to do. And I think the second piece of that is moving people into, easier, lower cost areas of care, moving surgery from inpatient to outpatient, moving people out of the ER into urgent care for less acuity, having people that can connect with us digitally or with virtual care versus having to go to a facility. So I think that's really, has been job number one. I think number two is really been focused on, really tying back to purpose in our people. We've seen a 40% reduction in turnover in our team members since we started this journey. We've seen about a 50% reduction in turnover for our, 60% reduction in turnover for our physicians. So, I think we've just focused on making life easier for them. You heard in the introduction, last year with our technology solutions and our Chief Digital Officer, Laura Wilt, driving this work, we saved 1 million people hours last year. That's just the tip of the iceberg of what we can do to make it easier for our people, make it a better work environment, and easier for our patients. So those are some of the things we've tackled. I think the other thing is we've moved from being a much more of a holding company model to being integrated. Integrating our clinics and hospitals, integrating our home care to our hospitals. And so we have all these pieces of the system, but bringing it together for patients and making it easier for them has been a big focus for us.
I'm struck by the point you made that in arguably one of the wealthiest parts of the country, we've got such a huge access problem. When I think about healthcare's challenge, it feels a bit of a perfect storm. Downward pressure on reimbursements, upward pressure on demand, and downward pressure on staff availability.
Yeah.
Historically, health systems have been able to grow their way out of it by building more facilities. But there's financial pressures facing most health systems as well. So how do you think about the balance between adding all the stuff you need to add, which you've talked about, but also getting more out of what you've already built?
Yeah, so I think it's an and, right? And I know you know this given your background. I mean, we look at the capacity we have in our ORs, in our imaging units. I mean, we're looking at every area of our organization to make sure we optimize capacity. Average length of stay, which is the amount of time people stay in hospitals. Every 0.1, so our average length of stay is about 4.9. Every 0.1 that we reduce that, we go from 4.9 to 4.8, we create 50 hospital beds across our system. 50. And if you think about it, it probably costs us to build a 100-bed hospital, it probably costs us $600 million of capital. So if we can reduce by 0.2, we save $600 million of capital, and we can take care of more people, which is the most important thing. So I think this idea of efficiency, throughput, utilizing the assets we have to their largest extent, moving people to an easier, more accessible level of care, those are all big components of what we're trying to do. Now going back to the macroeconomic issues, the single biggest issue happening in healthcare today, I mean, if you don't take anything else from the talk, for the 7 people that stayed after Satya left, it's this: 11,000 people age into Medicare every single day in America. 11,000 people, and every day that happens, every physician, every hospital in America takes a pay cut. And the pressure that is creating and going to create in the health system over the next 3, 5, 10 years is going to be enormous. It's going to drive enormous change. It's going to drive enormous consolidation, or the need for consolidation. Now, whether that can happen or not, given the regulatory environment, we'll see. But I think it is going, and this is where I think organizations that lean into that and deal with it are going to do fine, and ones that don't are really going to struggle.
I've often heard the saying that AI is not going to replace the physician, but a physician who uses AI is going to replace one who doesn't. So
yeah, I think you're right, and I think organizations that don't lean into this, and this is where I mean we're a $20 billion system. We're the 12th largest not-for-profit, but compared to the insurers and whatnot, United, that's $400 billion. I mean, we're small compared to those guys, right? But if you're a standalone hospital that's 3 or 4 or 500 million in revenue, you really can't make the investments in these types of technologies. Right. And I think that's where scale is going to matter. And I think you're going to see systems that are larger, that have the capability, that operate in an integrated fashion, will be able to do this. Now, I will come back to say there are some large systems in the country that are not doing well, that are not integrated. So size isn't the only indicator. It's size and also how you operate the system, and do you operate it in this more organized, integrated fashion.
Right. It starts to become the many struggling airlines that then consolidate and create hub and spoke models.
Right.
And the airlines who run hub and spokes well actually do quite well.
Absolutely.
Unlike the others.
And if you look at, I look at the airline industry all the time for lessons for us. I mean, if you think about it, and I say this to our clinicians all the time. Because we talk about online appointments. You know, a physician doesn't want their schedule online. I want to control it. You're going to mess it up. Why? I'll get the wrong patient, all this sort of thing. And I'm like, well, do you know who booked the appointment for you? No, not really. Okay. You think about airlines and you're like, what if the airlines tomorrow, United, a lot of people probably fly United around here, if they said, hey, we're going to shut our app down, we're going to shut down, you know, checking in online, we're going to put lots of people at the ticket counter for you, we're going to have lots of people answering the phone from 8 to 5, and you're going to be fine. And people are like, that would be insane, right? And it's like, yeah, so that's what we do. So we have to change, and we have. And you know, to our physicians, to their credit, have really leaned in. We've moved huge amounts of appointment inventory online, and those are the ones that people book. I mean, and what we see, lower cancellation rates, lower no-show rates, higher patient satisfaction. I mean, the patients that are more digitally engaged with us, 7x satisfaction on kind of the services we give them. So I think this is where we have to lean into and just keep doing a better job. And going back to being connected, what does that mean? We like to think of the concept of connected you. So, you know, we all carry a phone, you know, a smartphone with us. I mean, you get discharged from the ER. If you just got a text from Sutter Health, hey, we know you're in our ER. Are you better or worse? You know, yes or no. Are you feeling better? Yes or no. If we just did that check-in and you're like, yes, I'm better. Okay, fine. Thank you, you know. If you're not better, you say no, we reach out to you. Or if you go home from a surgery, or you go home from a procedure, you go home, anything. Just a quick, you know, not to be overburdensome, but to check in on them. Hey, we're just curious. We want to make sure you're okay. Are you feeling better? Mm-hmm. If you get a no, then you know, okay, boom, we need to get on that, right? That's what I mean by being connected. You know, we just launched what we call Sutter Sync, which is a chronic disease management platform. We just launched it about 45 days ago. Starting in hypertension, going to diabetes, going to mental health, going to then, you know, kind of women prenatal care. The whole idea is, you know, blood pressure, high blood pressure is a big issue in our country and every area. You know, people, you know, if they come in traditionally, they come and get their blood pressure checked quarterly, they get their medicine checked, but it's 4 times a year. In our hypertension, you know, chronic disease platform, we do it 4 to 5 times a week.
Yeah.
So we see control rates have skyrocketed because we make sure people are on their meds, they're watching their diet, they're exercising, and it's all about behavior change. You can't change behavior 4 times a year. You can change it 4 to 5 times a week if you have that interaction. That's what that idea of being connected all the time is really about.
And that ties in with what Satya Nadella was saying at the end, which is the agentification of it, because your frontline staff doesn't have the time to make 10,000 phone calls a day.
No way.
So if you moved some of the more routine, are you okay after the ED, et cetera, you can start to do that.
And if you get a phone call today, you don't answer it anyway if you don't recognize the number. So, I mean, after visit phone calls are kind of a thing of yesterday.
That is for sure. Let's switch gears and start talking about AI in healthcare. What have you seen truly work to drive patient outcomes? Because there's a lot of hype, there's a lot of promise of what's coming tomorrow.
Yeah.
But what are you seeing that improves patient outcomes, reduces costs today?
Yeah. So I would say, so next week we have our quarterly board meeting. We're rolling out, you know, kind of the continued evolution and revision of our AI roadmap, which we see kind of working in, you know, 3 or 4 different areas. One would be just on kind of pure diagnostics of patients. So it's things like, you know, radiology reads, you know, things like pathology reads, that sort of thing. So kind of going in that direction. Predictive modeling around, you know, things like codes and that sort of thing. I think that's a piece of it. I think the second piece is really around, you know, what you can do with clinicians to make their lives easier and to kind of take administrative load off of them. And I think the third area is really around kind of what we see administrative for corporate services, you know, call centers, supply chain, rev cycle, et cetera, HR. I think where we've had huge, you know, so we work with a company called Bridge on the ambient listening side, you know, kind of in the exam room. It's been a huge success. We started talking to them about a year ago. We now have about 2,500 physicians and clinicians on it. And essentially listens to the interaction we have, you know, patient, physician in the exam room, knows the patient, knows the physician, is able to tee up a note, you know, kind of the construct of a note that the physician can modify, and then kind of goes to the chart. Over 500,000 notes. The adoption's been huge. It's working really well. We're taking it to the hospital for the ER. We're now looking at taking it to nursing for nurse charting. So I think that's been a big success. We've seen great work there. I think on the radiology side, kind of overreading for imaging studies to see if we've missed something, or initial reads to kind of identify the scans to look at more closely. I think that's going to be a big time saver for radiologists, and actually a big safety opportunity to basically kind of check the work of our radiologists. I think those are going to be big, and we've seen really good success there. I do think that how we use data overall, I mean, going to, I know your world about looking at predictive modeling for scheduling, looking at predictive modeling around throughput. I think all of that has huge opportunity. We're not there yet, but I think that all has major opportunity.
One of the things as I talk to health system leaders is a bit of a shiny object syndrome, because you can chase very many things.
Yeah.
When you think about prioritizing, one way we find useful is to separate financial prioritization, what helps back office things,
right,
clinical and operational.
Yeah.
How do you think about prioritization?
Yeah, I think we look at it, number one, does it kind of fit in our roadmap that we've laid out as far as what our priorities are, the areas we want to target and we want to focus on, so as a company there. I think part of the challenge for someone like us is we got bombarded with hundreds of point solutions, And the fact of the matter is that, people don't want 30 or 40 health apps on their phone. They want one. We don't want 30 or 40 point solutions if we can help it. We want to have a platform, like a bridge is a platform that we can scale to other pieces of utilization. So I think that's how we think about it is, what is an organization we could work with that's not just a single point solution, but can be a platform that we could scale to other things within the organization. I think the other thing I would say is that we look at our relationships really with three lenses. One, if we're going to develop a more strategic relationship, a commercial relationship, so we become a customer, a development relationship, so we want to be a development partner, and then an investor. And I think we look at it kind of with that three-pronged approach, because if we're a relatively large client, we can help organizations be successful. We want to basically be part of that success. And on the development side, especially with our innovation center in San Francisco, we want people from an organization like yours or others to sit with our people and co-develop things. And we've done that with a bridge, and frankly, I mean, we were the first ones in the country to bring a bridge into the ER because we developed it with them. So I think that's how we look at really trying to partner in a different way, and you can't do that with
1,000 people.
1,000 people. You've got to pick the organizations that you think are stronger, and maybe they're not mature, maybe they're evolving and new, which is fine.
Right.
But then it's like, do you gel well with the people? Do they want to understand your business? Are you guys going to be able to work together? I think that's what we look for. Right.
When we talk to CIOs, we see health systems with 1,000 point solutions.
Yeah.
And eventually it'll consolidate around a few platforms. There's obviously an EHR platform, there'll be an ERP platform, an operational, an ambient, and so on. So that makes sense. When we think about AI, it comes with a lot of considerations: data privacy, bias and fairness, regulatory, change management, et cetera. How do you navigate that set of landmines? What worries you? How do you navigate it?
I mean, I would say that's an evolution. We have an AI governance committee that looks at that. Is looking at the organizations that we work with. I think we're looking at a couple of different companies that will help us kind of test the AI models we use to kind of look for things like for bias. But I think we're in the early stage of this, right? And I think part of this is just going to evolve over time. But I think we got to do it carefully. I mean, the biggest thing, the biggest asset we have is trust. And if you lose that trust, you got a big problem. So we have to be responsible about how we do this, especially if we use it in a clinical enterprise, And so I think we do it with test cases, but test and scale quickly. We don't want to do pilots that we can't scale. We won't do pilots that we can't scale. That just doesn't make sense to us. So that's kind of how we think about it.
No, that's terrific. You talked about trust. I think particularly in the clinical context where clinicians have spent 30 years honing their craft and becoming particularly good at it, for them to rely on a black box or rely on any AI of any sort is a change management challenge. So how do you think about bringing the clinicians along to accept and adopt something that's quite alien to them starting out?
Yeah. So we are we're getting ready, probably in the next couple of weeks to announce a chief AI officer we're hiring, who is a physician, who has an incredible kind of clinical background. And I think she will, kind of help guide that. I think you also have to bring physicians in on the front end of this, And I think if you just try to cast it upon them and whatnot, you're going to get a lot of resistance. So I think part of it is, how do you bring them on the front end? How do you have them be part of the discussion? How do you talk about the why? Like, what are we trying to accomplish? Versus, well, this is a company that we like, and the CEO has a relationship, so let's work with them, right? That doesn't go over so well. Versus, okay, here's the issue we're trying to solve. Here's how we think the company can help us. Here's how we need physicians involved, kind of in a coordinated, organized fashion. So I think our governance and leadership structure, that's evolving, but I think we're on the right track. But I think part of this is you have to basically agree that this is a part and going to be a big strategy for you, and we have done that. We want to lean into that, and it's not just, oh, we'll work on it when we can. We've got teams that are working on this, they're focused on it, and it's a key part of what we do.
When you were describing ambient and how it's scaling beautifully, et cetera, I could see that part of it is you're able to return the physician to taking care of the patient instead of putting their eyes into the keyboard and the screens, right? So that's clearly there's an excitement around that. What else excites you about where AI could go? And if you had a magic wand and could make anything happen at Sutter with AI, what would it be?
That's a great question. I do think the integration of all of the activity data and what happens outside of our organization, how we can take that and merge it with what we have and try to have AI be the tool to determine predictions and strategies out of that. I think that is kind of where we need to go. And I think it's a challenge, right? Because you got privacy of data, that sort of thing, how this information's aggregated. But I mean, there's so much known by my smartphone and the apps I have on about like what happens with me every day. I wake up this morning, I know what my sleep score is. It gives me a readiness score, which I'm not sure what that is, but I feel if I'm not ready, I better get more ready. But it's if you had that and you had alerts on that somebody was in a downward slide for a number of days or weeks, and we had a triggering system we could kind of reach out. I think that's ultimately where we need to go, right? Okay. And that's going to take technology to do that, to look at all of that data to say, hey, these, we have 3.7 million patients. These 50,000 people, you got problems here, right? Like, what are we going to do, right? And it's probably in more chronic populations, more of our senior populations, that sort of thing. But I think that's ultimately how we, and can we reach out and say, hey, Sutter Health, we see that you've, gone a period, are you okay? Do you want to get checked out? Or you think about, on the Apple Watch, if you got the right version, it tells people if they're in AFib. Well, then what happens?
Right.
And we talk to Apple, they know all these people that go in AFib, but there's no follow-up.
No follow-up.
Imagine if we had the right follow-up on the other side of that, or whatever else, the Apple Watch or, other Android devices are going to do, and what they're going to tell us. I mean, that to me is the key of how we take that day-to-day information and connect it to the health system so we can be proactive and predictive. That to me is where we have to go.
It's magic. We've got an audience with lots of startup companies and founders and entrepreneurs. If you had one piece of advice for any of them on how they should think about engaging with health systems with the scale and complexity of Sutter? You talked about the 3 tracks. What else would you give?
I think the other thing I would tell them is, I think it comes back to, are you solving one single issue, or are you trying to solve a broader issue? And I know sometimes when you have a startup, it's hard to kind of think broader. You're trying to take like a little wedge and kind of deal with that. And that may be how it has to work, but I think you got to have a path to how you have a bigger impact.
How the wedge goes big.
Because we can't work with 100 companies that have wedge solutions. That's not going to work for us, right? We have to have an integrated model. And that's how we're trying to evolve our thinking. So I would say, what is your path to be more than a wedge,
That's a good way of thinking
and
about
a niche organization. And then, I think it would come back to be willing to kind of partner in the right way and spend the time building a relationship to build success versus just trying to sell something. I can tell you the worst meeting that I've gone to that I don't go to anymore is the health meeting, and probably a lot of people, go to it, but it's like, there's like 4,000 booths and it's just overwhelming. And to me, that's the challenge that we have to face and navigate through, because we can't work with all these companies.
So the wedge, but at the path to the future.
Yeah.
Warner, thank you so much for your time and your insights. We've talked a lot from times at Ochsner, times at Sutter, and how you see the future of AI evolve. Please join me in thanking Warner Thomas for his time.
Thank you so much.
Thanks. Thank you.